the Japanese came on the island in the early hours one morning, and the bombardment that they put up, we couldn't match anyway, because they were so strongly supported. They were bombarding the city of Singapore behind us. They were flattening that, wave after wave of Japanese aircraft, always 27, flying in a V formation, and it was just a hopeless situation. And I actually fought the 4th Battalion of the Suffolk Regiment. We were supported by the Cambridgeshires and the Norfolks. We were actually fighting, of all places, on this very beautiful golf course called the Bukit Timah Golf Course on the island of Singapore. And I will never forget Friday the 13th of February 1942. We lost so many men. The slaughter was that bad. They were just the other side of the golf course and we were here. And our colonel decided we should have a bayonet charge, but he'd obviously lost his reason, because there was no way you could bayonet charge across that. The field of fire was that bad. Men were being cut to ribbons, and we had our first real taste of how bad, how horrible, and how futile war is, and the horrors of war at that stage. We were left on a Bren gun post at the bottom of this hill in the cemetery, and the orders were to stay there until the last bullet had gone and then make our way up the top. Well, the Japanese, we could hear them screaming and shouting, and some of them were shouting in English, you know, Tommy, tonight you die, if you ever heard anything like it. So I let fire with a Bren gun carrier, and I think I could safely say that the barrel was white hot when there was no more ammunition. We had to go. So we said run, and we ran from tombstone to tombstone up this hill when Jimmy was hit, and his face, I thought half his face had gone, and I got him up the top, covered in blood. I wasn't hit at that stage, and I never saw Jimmy Kiss again until after the war. He was taken away, obviously, over the hill to an ambulance depot, and that's a very interesting story I'll pick up later on. 3 other of my mates, when we went back after capitulation, we had to bury. One of them actually had his bayonet through a Jap, and somebody had bayoneted him in the back. We had to bury all of them, and it was a horrific situation. Well, we got up to the top where our colonel was, and we had to withdraw into the streets of Singapore, actually in the streets, and they had these big malarial drains, and I was hit. I had a small wound in my hands, were bleeding. I don't know what hit me, but something. It was a bit uncomfortable, and there was nothing could be done about it. And I was actually captured in the early hours of the morning of February the 15th, 1942. There was about 8 of us lying in this malarial gutter, and a Japanese tank, and people said they didn't have tanks, but they did have tanks, came down, and he spluttered machine gun all one side where some of our men were screaming. One young lad got up, and he ran across the road, obviously to try to get to our side, and he was literally cut in half. His body departed in front of us. It just fountains of blood. Another one had decapitated at the time. It's horrific business. And the Jap tank paused at the end of the road, swung round, and then we thought, well, this is it. It's going to do our side. And an officer that was with us with a peculiar name of Captain Wystock Crundle, don't know where he got it, he had a walking stick, and he put a white handkerchief on and held it up, and to our utter amazement this tank stopped a few feet, the turret opened, and a voice said in perfect English, "Get out, put your hands up and stand in front of the tank," which of course we did. And that's how I was actually captured. Then we were taken back behind the Japanese lines, and our own guys were shelling us from the beach then, and it was a very uncomfortable experience because the Japanese seemed to think that we were Americans and not British. And they asked the questions, and I had an interpreter came, he sort of said, under fire. We were back on the golf course in Japanese hands on the morning of the 15th of February 1942. And I said, no. He said to me, what are you, British? I said, we are British. I said, name, rank and number. So I said, my name, Ernest Warwick, 6019289. That was it. Give no more information. And this guy said, well, we know you're Americans, you came in on American ships, you're Americans and you're lying, you belong to America. And I said, no, we're British. What unit you're in? Don't know. And then he said, well, we're going to execute you one at a time. And they meant business, they weren't playing movies. And why they picked on me, I don't know, probably because I was the ugliest looking guy there, you know. And he said, we'll start with you. He said, until you tell us what unit you were in. And at that moment, I think my life was saved by about 15 seconds because it was now, time was going on, it was now in the evening, and they had a little small radio van, one would say, and they obviously were receiving message from Yamashita, their commander-in-chief, and they came out shouting just as this firing squad putting their guns up, and I must confess I did feel very frightened, but I thought to myself, well, I'll make a run for it. I would never have got away. I thought I'd dive and run, but they would have got me anyway. And at that moment, this Japanese officer shouting, waving their hands in the air, I couldn't understand. The interpreter came over and he stood in front of me. He said, "You're a very lucky man." He said, "Your Commander-in-Chief, General Percival, has surrendered the island of Singapore to us as from now, and you are honourable Japanese prisoners of war."